This podcast is brought to you by Hills Community Aid and has been funded by Castle Hill RSL.
Well, hello and welcome welcome back. If it's you're joining us again today to Good Men Don't. For those who've watched before, that's great. If you're new to it, then fantastic. We'd love to see you here, and thanks for connecting. Now, Good Men Don't. Let me just tell you a little bit about what the program's about. The podcast essentially is for men, designed for men, and first of all, we want to focus on how to build good, respectful relationships. So that's going to be our first, responsibility to try and connect and tell you that. The second thing we want to talk about is about domestic abuse and family and domestic violence, and start to put some frameworks around that. Now, let me just say that today we're actually going to do some what I think is some fairly interesting work. We're going to look at some myths that are out there in the community, and these are the sort of things that I guess are in the society, and maybe they're not understood, or maybe they're misunderstood, and certainly, and sometimes they'll be used for good and bad. So I guess we know fine well that domestic violence or violence against women is at epidemic proportions at the moment, and I guess as we sort of look about that, I think the other thing that occurs to me is the extent of the damage that occurs both to individuals and the impact it has on them, but the impact on the community and the social issues around that. So as we talk about these myths that exist in society, we actually want to use this as a learning opportunity. We want to try and bring shine some light on it and get to a stage where we can understand exactly what the myth is telling us, and we'll either debunk it and decide whether it's fact or fiction. So that's our challenge today. Levi's right beside me, so that's great. Levi, I guess in terms of your perspective, I guess what do you want to see come out of today's conversation?
Thanks, Warren. I guess what I'm most looking forward to is having a chat with you, just like last podcast where we kind of bounced ideas, had agreements and disagreements, but this time, I guess, being more fact-based with the fact or fiction. That is one thing I'm looking forward to, but what I'm most looking forward to is actually having our guest. For those who can't see right now, we've got Bryan Mullan with us. He's a big part of the community around the Hills area. He does a lot of great work, some of which actually being the walk against domestic violence. He's also got a candlelight vigil for victims of domestic violence. And in his more recent work, he'll also be doing a father-son workshop about abuse and building respectful relationships. So he's got a lot of stuff already in the community.
Yep.
So it'll be great to actually hear from an experienced person what their viewpoints on all this what's happening around our community. So without further ado, I'd actually just like to introduce you guys to Bryan. Thank you. Take it away, please.
Thank you, Levi. I am a retired school principal, and so if I have an expertise, it's actually in child abuse. Because for 40 plus years I worked with children, and many of them were victims of abuse. My only real encounter with domestic abuse was I would often have women come to speak with me about the situation at home. They'd say, I can't send my child on an excursion because my husband won't let me spend that much money, those sorts of things. And I was able to redirect, I suppose, but I wasn't able to intervene in any particularly effective way. Having watched the increasing number of serious victims of physical abuse over recent years, I decided it was time to get involved. And I would describe myself as an activist, not as an expert.
Right.
And so organising a march is about activism. Although the march is very much actually about the meetings we have at the other end of the march, where we sit secondary school students down and we talk to them about not so much about abuse, but about respectful relationships. And we bring the community into another venue and we talk to them about some of the statistics. The local police are excellent. They come in and they give us all the information anyone could possibly take up. But we also introduce to them a number of people who have the capacity to support them to aid them if they want to make some progress in terms of their own situation.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with an issue at the moment, actually, from somebody who has been to the march a couple of times and decided that I'm an expert and would like some help. So she's asked my wife to help. Because you don't ask a man, even if he organises marches and candlelight ceremonies, because this if you're intimidated by a male, then it's really hard to talk to a male.
Yeah, of course.
I think one of the things, Brian, that I've you say you're not an expert, and I don't see you as an expert, but I see you as a very strong advocate for women, and I've seen that over and over. Every time I sort of see you involved in something, you know, just like you said, people will approach you, or they might approach your wife, but at the end of the day, you're the person that will be advocating one way or another and helping that person, and I think that's just absolutely fantastic.
And perhaps trying to gather other people into the same, trying to twist their arms to look at the issues and become advocates themselves, because we certainly don't have enough, and we definitely don't have enough in the male community. And where we do have advocacy in the male community, we don't have resources. So it's a very challenging situation.
And certainly, guys, if you're sort of listening at home, the thing that we want to happen, hopefully, is that through this process you'll start to form groups and talk about this issue, and maybe get involved as an advocate in some way. So you know, we'll talk about how you might do that later on in the program. I
might even find other people who are happy to help me with organisation.
Absolutely, that'd be great. Look, we might get straight into these myths and try and debunk some of them. So the first one, guys, we sort of we gave you a heads up at the end of the last program in terms of what the first one is. So, Levi, can you sort of maybe just step us through that?
Yeah, sure. So our first myth is, in Australia, we don't have a problem with violence against women. Brian, where do you think we lie with that? Fact or fiction?
There's no question that we have a huge problem about it. And if I can be really pragmatic about it at the moment, at enormous financial cost to our community. Violence against women is not just an affront to half of the population, it's also a terrible cost on our community, and it means that resources can't be directed to other things. So yes, we do have a significant problem, and if I can go to an extreme end of it, since 2000 and... Sorry, I've got to look at a piece of paper. Between 2021 and 2024, the number of deaths as a consequence of domestic violence increased by 50%.
Wow.
And if you look at the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics, the number of AVOs issued in the same period of time from 2021 to 2024 went from 77,000 to 104,000. Now, some people will tell you this is because women are more willing to report.
Okay.
And that may have some influence on it, but I can't believe that it has enough influence for a 50% increase in the number of AVOs reported.
Sure.
We did go through that period in 2020 when people were locked in their homes, but that wasn't a one-off increase. It's something that's continued over time. And I wonder whether that people became involved in domestic abuse in 2020 when they were all locked down and frustrated, and whether having achieved some form of success as they perceive it, whether that's led to an increase further down the track.
Interesting.
Sorry, Levi, one of the things that we were talking about, I think in the last conversation, is that whether in fact there had been a significant increase because of education, because people understood the issues better now than what they did sort of 40 or 50 years ago. I guess we didn't actually arrive at a consensus view about what that was, but certainly domestic violence has been around for a long while. We know that. And we also know, I was looking at some stats just the other day, that it takes a number of incidents for, in terms of some sort of abuse or violence in the home before the woman, as a victim, is prepared to necessarily report it. So lots of times we look at the stats and say, well, they're huge, but they're probably a lot larger in many ways than what is getting reported.
Very much so. The commander of the Castle Hill Police will state that as many as 27 incidents will occur before a woman goes to the police about
Wow.
domestic violence. The police actually have a very good app. It's called Empower You. Definitely worth looking at because it's an app where women can record incidents, and it's one you can get out of very quickly on your phone because you have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But women can record incidents, and if they take 20 or 30 incidents before they report it to the police, then they have a trail of evidence, and the police will use the information on that app. Right. So it's called Empower You, and it's definitely worth looking at, even if you don't download it. Make sure you know about it.
Okay. I think so that sort of number, 27, 28, 29, whatever it is, it just intrigues me why it takes so many times for a woman to respond and to report it. Do you have a view about that?
Part of it is because we don't necessarily classify the things that happen as domestic violence. If you look at the No to Violence website, they actually have a list of, I think it's 12 things that are indicative of domestic violence. And one of them that surprised me and made me realise that none of us are in the clear was throwing things in the house. A man who picks something up and throws it in the house.
Yeah.
Not at somebody, but just throws it.
Yeah.
No to Violence would classify that as a case of domestic abuse. And there's a scale that you move along. And I think one of the things we've got to do is we've got to pull people back down from wherever they sit on that scale. If we can get men to pull themselves back down from where they are so that they get back to an understanding of what they're doing and so that they don't progress in the other direction, which ultimately ends in violence.
Just further on that, you're right. I didn't know that, throwing something around the house, not anyone, it is a form of abuse. It's also, I guess, recognizing what abuse is. It's not just that physical aspect of physically harming someone.
Oh, no.
There's so much more to it. And I think it's important to be educated on it, to know, wait a second, I've just thrown something at a wall. This is actually a form of abuse, and it's something that we need to think about when we're doing these things.
And if I say to my partner, what you're doing is really upsetting me and I'm having a real problem with it and I'm going to walk out of here, and I go down to the pub and have a couple of beers and then come home again.
Yeah.
Is that me exercising coercive control? Is it a step towards coercive control?
Gosh.
Even the little things. It's like, and we come back to this later, I know, but it's like sitting around after a game of golf or bowls and somebody at the table tells a misogynistic joke. And because you want to relate to the other three people at the table, you laugh politely.
Yeah.
And all that does is encourage the attitude.
Yep.
Yeah.
You actually need to respond to that and say, that's really not appropriate. And it's certainly not funny. And if you do that, there's a really good chance you'll lose your bowls partners or golf partners.
Yeah.
Because they'll feel confronted by what they see as harmless and you're responding to it in a negative way.
It is quite hard though. I've been in those situations, being younger with my friends, and those comments are made, and you're right. It's just laughing. You don't necessarily agree with it, but then that thought process of oh man, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be outcasted. I may lose my bowls partner. Not so much for me. I am playing soccer. I don't think I've gone
They're
to the
looking for
bowling
young
round.
people to play bowls.
Yeah, not me just yet. But I completely agree with you where it is just you may feel like this is not the right step, but it actually is into creating a society where we're holding each other accountable. And this is something we talked about, Warren, where we do need to hold each other accountable.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's like the short-term loss, but long-term of reward of creating a safer space for everyone.
Yes.
There was a really powerful lesson that I thought on TV not so long ago, and it was on one of those shows, I think it was Married at First Sight or something like that, where one of the contestants actually punched a hole in the wall
Oh,
through anger. So they literally stopped the show and sat him down and talked about how inappropriate that was, because it was done in a threatening way. And I thought that was a powerful lesson for people to say, hey, something simple as that, it's an extension to some degree of the sort of things we were just talking about before, but here's a physical aspect. And the guy said, no, it's just a one-off, and I've never done it before. But the lesson was there. We had to learn it, and it was good to see it highlighted and brought to an attention that people couldn't turn their eyes off.
But there is an element of sacrifice if you speak up. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
you rapidly diminish your social circle.
Yep.
Good example, it's not about domestic violence, but 12 months ago I was playing golf with a fellow that I played with a number of times, and he made a comment about the fact that the First Nations population, the Aboriginal population, were completely uncivilised until white men arrived. And so I took him aside and I talked to him about the number of different nations and the languages and that they built and that they farmed and that they had history and they had living stories. And he's never played golf with me again. And I, it's that risk. And it's the same if you take someone aside on something else, where they simply say what they've heard on the media, say what they've read in a book somewhere. And they haven't done the research. They don't realise that what they're saying is completely false. And if you pick them up on it, you do pay a price.
Yep.
I think coming to it and the different, I guess, stories we've all had is one thing that's, I guess, slightly different is it's all from different ages. Like I'm talking about it from my friends group, you too, Bryan, you've played golf and similar issues where this isn't just a demographic or a younger guy, older guy, middle-aged man. This is happening. Everyone is doing it. Everyone's susceptible to being in that friends group. And, you could be with them for years and years, but it's, I guess, important to know the signs or like hear the conversations and hold yourself accountable. Think about what type of man you want to be. And then coming back to what we were talking about last podcast, the last podcast where it's finding the good role models and trying to be more like them so you can speak out and talk to the right people and not go down that pathway with your partner or with any kind of relationship you have to be the one now facilitating those poor conversations, the conversations which promote hate and abuse. Like, that's not what we're trying to do at all, no.
Okay.
Can I say
Brian?
you're just a little too old to have experienced what's happening in secondary schools now with programs like the Love Bites program where we talk about respectful relationships, where all of the students sit down, boys and girls together, and they decide that this is acceptable, this isn't acceptable. They talk about the whys. They have an understanding of domestic violence and sexual abuse that we will never have because they're getting it very early in life. And one of the things it does is it makes the girls a little more assertive and a little more assured of themselves if they do become victims that there is a way out of this and there is a pathway to a safer life.
That's amazing.
So it's happening, but we're going to have to wait 2 or 3 generations for those kids to come through. And a lot of them will fall by the wayside. But the number, I suppose the bulk will be people who understand and are prepared to take action.
Can I... We need to move on to the second one, but otherwise we'll never get down to it. But let me just say, it's really encouraging that there is this conversation. It's happening in a broader context, the sort of things in schools and places like that. And I was really encouraged just not so long ago, and again, I'm going to refer to something on TV. It's something I saw. It was on a current affair. There was a change of anchor, and Ali Langdon took over. Her very first show, she chose it totally to be focused on domestic violence. She could have she could have talked about refrigerators and the sort of stuff that the current affair normally talks about what you should buy, but she chose a topic that is very, very topical and very important. So I see more and more now there's more focus being given to it, which is really encouraging.
Oh, no question about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So,
we're seeing the right attitudes in some of the reporting in the media too.
yeah, yeah. So myth 2, Levi, I might just read this one out, the next one.
No. Did you want me to read that out?
Oh, yeah, okay, go for your life.
Sure, no worries. And then do you want to grab the next one after? Let's do that. So, myth 2, the majority of domestic violence offenders in the Hills District of New South Wales are males aged between 30 and 49. What are your thoughts, Brian?
I think that where that number comes from is in terms of reported incidents.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
We see it in children. We see coercive control in children as young as, well, I've got this theory that parenting is about coercive control. So almost from the day you're born, you're immersed in it. And so children practice it when they're in preschool, they practice it when they're in primary school.
Sure.
So we have something that is perhaps not regarded all that seriously as leading towards abuse that happens very early in life. And that statistic about the 30 to 49 year age group is about the hills.
Yes.
And if you go out into a rural area, particularly an isolated rural area where there's 2 to 3 times as many incidents of domestic violence, then I don't think the age ranges apply quite so strongly, particularly as most people of that age have left the rural areas and headed into the city. So, yes, I couldn't disagree with the statistic in the hills, and it's a group, I think, who is still possibly see themselves as learners who can change their behaviour.
Yeah.
I would hate to try and change the behaviour of most 70 and 80-year-olds. We're pretty well stuck.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I saw some other a way of looking at this from a different perspective, and I was saying, like in the hills area, it's sort of 50% of males on average, 50% males and 50% females. Thereabouts differs a few. So here we have a stat that actually talks about 65% of males specifically. So when you look at that in terms of the stats, equal numbers, but then suddenly in this situation the numbers are higher.
Yes.
Again, it's sort of that's pretty sobering. Yeah.
Nationally, I believe that the proportion of males who are reported, and again it comes down to reports, you're pushing 80 to 90% being male offenders. We can't walk away from the fact that until men change, domestic violence isn't going to stop.
Yep.
And I believe that if men change, then the number of incidents of domestic violence by women will also diminish. Because when you look at men who die in incidents of domestic violence, it's almost always the case that the woman will say, I did it to protect myself. And so we've got a situation where if we can draw men away from engaging in domestic abuse, then hopefully the response from the women who may be abusers will be, well, there's no need for me anymore. I can back off. I can be a decent human being.
Interesting. I have a different perspective on that. So you think it's more like girls are reacting and defending themselves with, I guess, some level of abuse is what I'm hearing? Or
Not
no?
always, but I think a lot of it is responsive.
Sure.
Because girls in particular from about 9, 10 years of age onwards use coercive control as part of their relationship building and relationship maintenance.
Interesting.
The Americans do a wonderful job of it in their teen movies about girls in high school. But it really is, it's that coercive control issue. It's very much part of their social structure. And some of them will continue that into a relationship. And it can be provocative. There's no question about that. It can result in domestic violence from the woman towards the man or the other way around. Either way, we're again looking at a problem where we need to get in there and get the message across to people that this is not an acceptable behaviour, whether you're a man or a woman.
Yes.
This isn't what you do.
Yeah, the bottom line, exactly right. There's no room for it in any gender.
as for what you're saying, I still would find it difficult that it's based off of a man's abuse. And yes, the stats are there where there's a lot more male perpetrators. I just find that it's not mutually exclusive, where there are girls who may not understand what abuse is, or potentially, I guess, hypothetically, they've been in a situation where they've been abused in one area, so they might know they might know all about abuse, but there's just so much to learn about abuse. And same as me, like I'm learning a lot about it, but there's just so much to it. So maybe it's unintentional if a girl does it, same as if a guy does it, but I don't think it's only on the account that if a guy is going to be abusive, then a girl's natural reaction is to defend herself with abuse.
Oh, no. That's not the norm. And what I'm saying is if 10% or 20% of abusers are women,
Yeah.
then when it comes to a court, when it comes to the police,
Yeah.
a woman who is accused of abuse will almost always say it was self-defence. He abused me and I was responding. Now, they will say that, I would imagine, when it's true, and I can imagine that some people would say that when it wasn't true.
Sure.
Just as when men are accused of abuse, it's amazing how many different stories there are available to them.
Yeah.
And, Bryan, you mentioned coercive control, and I don't know much about that, I must admit. So I'm looking forward to when we have a guest comes in about 2 or 3 conversations' time. He's got to talk and tell us exactly what coercive control is, because I think it's one of those things that's misunderstood in many ways. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. While we're talking about the hills, let's maybe go to the next myth. So this is still set in the Hills District. It says, in the Hills District of New South Wales, the majority of domestic violence events that police are called to, and this is in the last 12 months until March 2025, were alcohol and drug or alcohol or drug related. Does that sit with what your research says, Bryan?
I can't give you the figures for the Hills District.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is that there was a study came out in Deakin University in December 2016 that said that binge drinking doubles the risk of offence, of intimate or partner violence. So if the drinking occurs, it can make a contribution on that basis. There's also a number of statistics that come through from some of the more reliable alcohol and drug consultation groups that suggest that around 50% of domestic violence issues have alcohol sitting in there somewhere. And quite often it's when both people have been binge drinking or drinking to excess that this happens. I think it's interesting, the South Australian Royal Commission, the one that was set up after 4 women died in 1 week in Adelaide at the end of 2023, the Royal Commission that Natasha Stott-Despoja headed came back with 136 recommendations. The South Australian government has decided to implement 7 of them at this stage and consider the others. But recommendation number 128, which the South Australian government is taking up, is about delivery of alcohol.
Right. Yep.
And saying that there must be at least a 2-hour delay between the order and the arrival of the alcohol, and they want to limit the hours in which alcohol can be delivered. So it's obviously considered by people that have gone into this very, very deeply to be a significant contributor to domestic
It's
violence.
interesting because a lot of my friends, when I've talked to them about domestic violence, the thing that they tend to go to is that something has caused it, you know, and they focus on alcohol and drug. And a few years ago, my wife and I travelled around Australia, and the thing that we found, especially in the very remote areas, Alice Springs and places like that, amongst the Aboriginal communities, is the amount of domestic violence that occurs there. And it just, you know, it seemed to me I came back with this desire to do something. I'd never done anything about it, and I should have. But it just seemed to me that every time I turned around, there was a woman with an arm in plaster. And clearly a result of domestic violence. And we know that alcohol in that community is a significant issue.
The rates of domestic violence in the First Nations communities is significantly higher than others. And we know that alcohol is a problem in a lot of those communities, particularly the more isolated communities. But I don't see alcohol as a cause. I see alcohol as a trigger.
Yep.
There has to be something underlying, and the disinhibition created by alcohol is the thing that then relates alcohol to domestic violence. So there's got to be something there in the first place that where the person who commits the violence has decided that it's okay to do this, and or they may be holding themselves back, but when they get the disinhibition of alcohol, suddenly that restraint disappears and the violence erupts.
Bryan, you talk about triggers there. This is something that I found out of the Victorian government some work that they were doing, and they were talking about the drivers of men's violence against women. And essentially they documented 4. So I might just read it if I can.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in your perspective. They said number 1 was the condoning of violence against women. So if we condone it, it's just going to happen again. Number 2 is men's control of the decision-making and limits to women's independence in public and private life. Third one was rigid gender stereotyping and dominant terms or dominant forms of masculinity. And lastly, male and peer relations and the culture of masculinity that emphasise aggression, dominance and control. And I find them interesting because for me, in my mind, there are a lot of other, you call them triggers, but for me they're also drivers.
Yes, it's called a number of different things. It's the patriarchy. And you and I in particular came from a society, or were raised in a society when men were the dominant people. Yeah. They were the income earners. The wife stayed at home. Yep. The men had a level of control, and that was the patriarchy. And that still sits very strongly with a lot of our community, not necessarily the older ones, because young people grow up in a household where the male is dominant. So that's something that is definitely a trigger. The other thing that you mentioned there was toxic masculinity, and we still admire the toxic male. We still admire the footballer who can take the repeated blows. We still have phenomenal ratings for sports events where people punch and kick each other. We still see men as being the strong, the powerful, the dominant,
the alpha male.
We've got to get beyond it.
Yeah.
I think just like interjecting as a younger person, like for a guy's perspective on a guy, like, yeah, a person who plays like rugby, who's like fit, active, is like, oh yeah, that guy is pretty huge or like a pretty cool guy usually. So yeah, I agree. As for, we probably couldn't speak on the female perspective, like what a masculine guy is. It feels like it's being redefined a little bit now. From what I've heard, like a lot of my friends wouldn't pick that rugby player, wouldn't pick that, captain of the soccer team. They're just, I don't know, what I hear is just like a funny guy, stock standard, easygoing, nice and caring. That's the basis of what they will think is like a perfect masculine guy. Like it's not, you don't need to be playing these sports. But these are just like a handful of my friends. But my perspective is like similar to yours, where it's like, oh, if I can see like a basketball player dunking, I'm going to instantly think that guy is really cool. He can do stuff that I can't. So yeah, I think from our perspective, from a male's perspective, yeah, you're bang on. But then again, it's just us 3 in the room. So
an interesting thing I was just as you were talking there, Levi, is that and I hear a lot about. I've never listened to any of these podcasts, but there are these podcasters in America who are really strong, misogynistic viewpoints, which they spew out in terms of influencing young people, and surely I guess that I don't know how you control that, but Bryan, you've probably heard. Have you listened to any of those podcasts at all?
I refuse to listen to those podcasts.
I don't blame you.
Even as like a headmaster, you'd see some of the dynamics maybe.
I see misogyny. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
I see people who are quite happy to espouse misogynistic views. I see people with misogynistic views being rewarded for their conduct. I won't name football players who are rewarded. I keep coming back to football, I'm sorry. but they engage in inappropriate behaviour towards a woman, sexual behaviour, physical behaviour, but we forgive them.
Yeah.
Because they're really good at kicking and catching and throwing and running.
Yep.
It's like, he probably didn't mean it. Like,
Yes.
I know what you mean.
And they
yeah.
also, most of them have very expensive and very good lawyers too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's this, we still tend to reward and ignore. So we reward the behaviours that we like, we ignore the behaviours we don't like, rather than responding to the behaviours we don't like.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, I'd like to put this person on a pedestal because he does this, we need to say, we need to take this person down a peg or two from the pedestal because he does that.
Yeah.
And we need to get some balance in there. And it's hard to actually say to somebody, I find it difficult to respect you because you do this or that.
Absolutely.
It's a really difficult thing to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, go on.
that's very consistent with what you were saying before about talking to someone about an inappropriate comment and telling them it's inappropriate. And essentially you may well lose a friendship. But at the end of the day, it has to be said.
Yes.
So guys, you're listening in, this is the sort of stuff we want you to do, is that when you're out at the pub or whatever and your mates are talking inappropriately, then you need to push back on them.
It's interesting. There have been a number of occasions when I've pushed back, and I gave an example earlier where that person disappeared from my social circle. I've also had occasions where I've pushed back against the misogynistic joke, against the sexist statement, and said that's not really appropriate. Think about the person you're talking about, or somebody who hears this who might be of that particular gender. And what happens if the relationship is retained is that person is far less likely to make that comment when I'm present. But I do not believe that I've changed his behaviour.
Yeah.
So we need not just one or two people to do this, we need the majority of people to do this.
We're talking about cultural change, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that for me is, you can't change overnight, but over time, something that's embedded as much as this is, we need a long-term strategy that's going to work over a couple of generations.
We also need to help the people who are the offenders.
Yep.
And at the moment, we're just not getting anywhere near it.
Yep.
I mentioned earlier there have been 180,000 reports, AVOs issued in New South Wales. There are programs for men who are offenders, but at the moment, there are only 4,000 men in those programs.
Wow, only 4,000.
Because the programs fill up. Courts say you've got to go and attend this program. The programs fill up. We are not offering anywhere near enough support if we want people to change their behaviour.
Yeah.
Well, we're quickly running out of time here. We might actually try and do one more of the myths, Levi, and then we'll sort of maybe wrap this one up for the day and see where we go. So what's next, Levi?
Yeah. So we've got one. In the community, it's always easy to tell who the abuser is.
Oh, if only. It's reasonably easy to tell if the court finds them guilty. But until that point in time, no. No, because the last thing I'm going to do is walk into a room and say, I belted my wife yesterday.
Yeah.
Or I won't let her have enough money to go out and have a coffee with a friend. Or I ring her constantly to find out what she's doing and where she is. I'm not going to walk into a room and say that. I'm going to walk into a room and I'm going to talk about what I saw on television last night, or what the Prime Minister's doing, or at the moment what Donald Trump's doing. You can always get a conversation. But I'm not going to walk in and define myself as an abuser. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to be that charming, erudite person that I've always wanted to be. And it's easy to hold that face up and be an abuser in private. So no, you can't tell who it is.
Why do you think it's the embarrassment side of things? Because I guess people, let's say an abuser, they've done something, they know it's wrong. Do you think it's embarrassment to talk to their friends about it? Hey, I've done this. I'm not sure where to go about it. And then they may just continue on that pathway and then potentially continue abusing. Do you think it's...
I think it's a real problem, because if you want to change, saying something to your friends about what you've done is not going to lead to change. You have to talk to somebody who's a professional, an expert in the field, somebody who can actually take you down a pathway and give you strategies on how to change. You can't say to somebody, stop doing this, and not give them an alternative. If you abuse somebody, you actually get rewarded for it, because you get what you want out of that environment.
Yep.
Sure.
You have to find a way of rewarding people for not abusing.
Yeah.
So how do we reward somebody who gets angry and holds that anger within and rationalises their behaviour and behaves like a decent human being? How do we reward them? We don't. But they get a reward out of the violence if it means that they can control the person towards whom they're acting violently.
Yeah. You did mention they don't get anything out of telling their friends. It's interesting. My mind instantly went to, oh, if something has happened, I would want to share this with the people I'm close with, because I wouldn't know where I would go next. And this is the whole thing of like, oh, there's not so much stuff out there that's in your face where, you've made a mistake. Oh, who do I call? So you would naturally talk to someone is what I would do. So going back to it, it's, yes, it may not help immediately, but I think it helps in the sense like you're sharing that. I think when you share the mistake, that's one step in the right direction at least.
And if you share it with the right person, you've got a chance of getting some positive feedback and some direction to assist you. But sharing it with your mates probably isn't going to go down that pathway.
Going back to what we were talking about, you need to have that right circle. Because if they were egging it on, like, oh, that's okay, then you're just going down that wrong path. Yeah, exactly right.
Oh, well, what a fantastic conversation we've had. Bryan, thank you for your advice, your wisdom, your thoughts. I think it's going to provoke a lot of discussion, and that's really great. In need, we might even get you back at some stage. So thank you again. So I'm Warren. It's been great to have you here. I'm just going to throw to Levi now, who's going to wrap up the rest of the day and sign off. Thanks, Levi.
Thanks so much, Warren. I appreciate that. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We really appreciate your time and listening into us. There were a lot of great conversations, thanks to Bryan, who really assisted us with thinking a little differently. And I think that's really important when we're coming into these conversations. Those who are interested in what Bryan does, so just a reminder, he has his walk against domestic violence, candlelight vigil, and potentially he'll be doing a father-son talk about respect and abuse. Those who are interested in what he has to offer, or who want to ask us questions regarding our fact or fiction segment, you can contact us on goodmenproject@hca.org.au. That's goodmenproject@hca.org.au. Thank you so much for your time. Bryan, thanks for everything. We really appreciate what you've done for the community. And we talked about what a respectful role model is. And I think what you do for the community and the people around you is really amazing stuff. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. This podcast is for information and educational purposes. The views expressed by the hosts and their guests are their own views and do not constitute professional advice. Listeners should consult professionals for specific advice tailored to their needs. We make no representation or warranties concerning the accuracy, completedness, or applicability of the information in the podcast.